Hey, Nathan. This is Marty Hartman. Good to see you here. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so we could hear you. So here we go. How's it going? Nathan, can you hear all right with your speakers set up and everything? Go ahead and open the chat again. Oh, I see. Nathan, he does not have a mic. Great. Okay. Understand. Well, got the question open there. Is there anything you want to ask of Marshall, or any issues, questions from the previous sessions? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to wait a few minutes for the other attendees to get here. So we'll probably wait until 2 or so. Until then, we'll just be hanging out here. Did you get a chance to go to the website link that I sent that has a recording from yesterday? Because there's an extra webinar that we did with Alan Wilds, which was interesting. Okay. Well, if you do have a chance, I sent that link in the email yesterday with the invitation for this webinar. It's a good session with Alan, so that's all for you guys. Give a chance to see that session on generosity programs. Very interesting. Okay. Well, Marshall, it's 2 o'clock. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and open my recording software, so just hold on for a second here. Okay, Marshall, I handed over organizer and presenter to you. If you want to go ahead and start the recording on your end also.
I'm recording. Got it.
Okay, and I'm going to mute myself and so go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, welcome to part 2, Building Your Team. We're so glad that you joined us today, and we look forward to the next hour or so as we cover this important part of building your team. And we're going to look at 3 things. We're going to look at building your church team from your church family for your building committee and subcommittees. Then we're going to look at delivery systems, which rolls right into the 3rd thing of selecting and engaging with the industry professionals that will come alongside your building committee and subcommittees to provide the services needed to design and build your new facility, your new property and buildings. And so as we go through this, if you have questions, if you'll hold on to them until the end of the webinar, until the end of the session, and then I'll be happy to answer your questions. As we looked at the last session, in the pre-session, we talked about preparation, planning, design, construction, and facility management as being a way to organize the 5 areas of any building project. And we're dealing primarily with preparation in the first 2 sessions in order to help us get started off on the right foot. We talked about the project timeline. There's cost and control that are involved, and we pressure you and preach to you to prepare well and to plan well, because it's there that you'll decide how your money will go and how well your project will go. And so it's important that we think through it and that we prepare well so you can spend your money wisely. Because once you begin to hire the industry professionals and release them to their work based on the information you had given them about what you want and how you want, when you want it, within what dollar mark or amount, you're going to give away control to them in order to produce their services and products. And your cost is going to escalate as shown here on the sheet. Let's talk first of all about building committees and your teams. First is how are you going to design your building committee, whether you're a small church, meaning under 200, a medium church under 400, or a large church over 400. And by the way, consultants and coaches set those numbers up, but usually 200, 400, or 500 people for a medium-sized church and above 400 or 500 for a large church. As you look at the scope of your project, the size of your project, and the size of your church, you'll follow different guidelines. Complexity grows as your church gets larger and older in order to accommodate the facility that you're providing for you to do your ministry in. The building committee, and let me just go through this, there's 2 parts I would recommend. Now, committees have been set up in all different kind of ways through the years, and I've seen them set up well, and I've seen them set up not so well. And so I want to give you, generally speaking, in this hour, one way to approach it. Everyone pretty much agrees that you want to have excellent leaders who can create excellent facilities. A good bit of what happens rises and falls on leadership, and thus the intent by ministry design training, ministry design concepts, for us to train the ministry leaders in your church and your organization to equip themselves so that they can go and execute a good process that will allow them with an end product of a facility that is pleasant and practical and is built within budget and within your time frame, so that you can use it for years to come to fulfill your God-given calling. Selecting the right leaders, assigning the right responsibilities to the right people, recruiting and training, evaluating and retaining the working body are some of the keys to successful church building project. You want to be able to assign the right responsibilities in your church, on your committee and subcommittee, to the right people. You want to recruit the right people. You want to train them. You want to evaluate their work. You want to retain them, and you want to deploy them, move them ahead. And so as we look at how you're going to design the structure by which you're going to build your committee and subcommittees, we're going to talk about several things. And so let me go ahead and put these up on the board for you. So it's these areas that we're going to hit on as we go through building committees and teams. First steps. One of the most important steps for the building committee is organizing how it plans to work together on the project. In order for your building committee to be a cohesive unit. Every person on your committee needs a clear description of what they plan to contribute to the team. They've got to know why they're on there and what skill sets or knowledge or experience they have that is going to fit within your design, what they're going to provide for you. Let me give you some basic characteristics that will play a particular and vital role in making your team effective. In other words, if you're going to pick the right people and give them the right responsibilities and then train them and engage them, deploy them into their work, here are 6 things that you need to make certain you have done correctly when you develop them. Number 1, a compelling purpose. A compelling purpose means they understand why you need the building. The more urgent the need and the easier it is to see it, clarity of purpose, the stronger people will involve themselves in it, generally speaking, and there needs to be a compelling reason for doing it. There are lots of reasons why people build for the wrong reason. Let me give you a book to consider. It's written by a gentleman, an architect named Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N. We'll put it on our website so you'll have access to these 6 things that I'm mentioning right now along with the book. But he wrote the book, Why Not to Build. Why Not to Build. And as I said, we'll put it on the website so you can click right to Amazon and be able to purchase the book. But what he does, he gives you in the book reasons why you should not build. He identifies wrong reasons for building and then gives you options to consider while you are looking at building, options to consider instead of building. Number 2, in the characteristics to develop your building committee is clear roles. Clear roles. You want them to know what responsibilities and duties they have, what areas they're going to be carrying out and responsible for. Number 3, recognized leadership. Simply put, folks, who's in charge and who isn't in charge? What does your leadership graph look like? Your organizational chart. What does it look like? Well, do an organizational chart for your building committee. So you know who the chairman is, the vice chairman. You know who the secretary is taking minutes and keeping up with all the records. And then why each person on the committee was asked to come into and onto the committee or the subcommittee that we'll get to in a few moments. So you want recognized leadership, clear roles, compelling purpose. Number 4, effective processes. What you want it to be efficient so it can be effective, but effective processes. Know how you're doing what you're doing and be in agreement about it. We're going to talk in a moment and within the hour about delivery systems. That's a part of having processes that are efficient and effective that pave the way for you, the pathway for you to successfully get your building built within all the budget and the timeline and so forth, so it's the right ministry space at the end of it. Here's the 5th one. Good relationships. One of the characteristics of a building committee is that these right people who you believe God is bringing them in to be a part of it, to do certain things, they need to have good, solid relationships one with another, because they are going to be under pressure. As I mentioned in our earlier webinar, part 1, every church gets bumps and bruises and cuts and scrapes. That's just a part of life. We get them as we go and live. And you do any kind of activity or rigorous activity in sports, working in the yard, or some other activity or event that you're involved in, you're going to get bumps, scrapes, bruises. That's a part of life. The second level is that you end up breaking an arm, a leg, an ankle in the midst of your activity. It's more severe, but it can be put back like it once was in its original condition, maybe even stronger. So you mend, reset, and mend the broken arm, the broken leg, the broken ankle. Then the third level is it's more catastrophic in that you lose the arm, not just break it. And the fourth level is catastrophic where the project loses its life. As I said last time, I believe, and I'm purely guessing, that somewhere around 70% of the time when a church wishes to build, they start, stumble, and stop, or they stall out and have to restart, and then they'll stumble again. But they wish to build, they fail. Let me go to the team selection, and I'm going to throw an idea at you that you need to ponder. If you go to Ephesians 4 and look in verse 8, 6, 7, and 8, and you swim around there a little bit, what you're going to find is that Christ has provided gifted people for his church, for his bride, for his church. And so men argue that within your congregation, God has already gifted the individuals that are necessary to work together for a successful campaign. Now, whether you agree with that assessment or you look at your congregation and go, wait a minute, we don't have all the necessary building committee people that we can fill up the committee, and we're going to need to borrow outside help, with us, the industry professionals. But the point is, you're to be recruiting and developing and then deploying people to serve on your building committee, and you need to have eyes to see people where God has gifted them. Let me give you two sources that you can use, and you have to purchase these. But if you go to placeministries.org, placeministries.org, or assessme.org, and we'll put both of these up on the website so you can have access to them. You go to both of these, and they help people identify who they are in several areas. And what Rick Warren called years ago a person's shape, his spiritual gifts, his heart, his passion, his abilities, his personality, and his experience. Those 5 things. To have someone for $10 take a survey that identifies those 5 areas to a certain level allows you to take and coach them and help them discern whether or not they belong and would fit in your ministry design for your project, for your building project, and that they would fit on the building committee or the subcommittee or in some way where they can use their gifts and passions and experience, and that they would fit chemistry-wise into the group. So you're trying to help them find their place in God's economy in your ministry. And a building project is not just about brick and mortar. It's about fulfilling the Great Commission. You want to reach people, and you want to grow them up into Christ-likeness as they come to Christ. And why not use this aspect? Very pressure-filled, stressful, demanding event or activity for your church, and you're trying to get fit, not just healthy, as we talked about in part 1, well, you need to help them see if they fit, but you need to be able to identify who would work together well on the building committee or on the subcommittees. There will ultimately be a spinoff of this building committee into a subcommittee which will consider and investigate and hopefully take action on and report all aspects of the building project as assigned. Let me give you number 2 here underneath how to develop them, not only the characteristics but also the criteria. And if you're going to bring people on and put them on the building committee or the subcommittee, now I'll explain to you in a moment how that's designed and how that works together for both a small, medium, and large church. So all 3 sizes can use what I'm giving you as a design to put together your committee. There are 7 or 8 things here, and again, I'll put them on an article, put them in a document for you. The basic criteria to use in choosing who will serve on your building committee and subcommittee are as follows. Number 1, they must have a love and passion for the mission of the church. hopefully every member in your church has taken ownership and bought in to the mission and the vision of your ministry. They ought to know what it is. They ought to know how it's going to be carried out and where you're headed. They ought to know what you're called to do, how you're called to do it, and where you see the church going. What's the destination? And so, but a person on your building committee, they need to have a great love and an earnest passion for the purpose of the church, for the mission of the church. Number two, they need to look at the whole, not just merely the parts. Number three, they must be people of grace, compassion, and prayer. James chapter 1 teaches and tells us that we're going to have we're going to have testing times. We're all going to have to face testing times. The bumps and bruises, scrapes, all those things are a part of every building committee in my experience, or every building project. But what happens if you have something broken or something broken off? How are you going to respond to something that God has sent and he desires to bring glory to his name and to do you good? So the testing times are for God's glory and for our good. He wants to make us mature and endure. So as you go through this is a disciple-making opportunity for you to build people in their Christ-likeness and give them an opportunity to use their skill sets, both spiritual and natural and nurtured, to serve the Lord through your building program. But they do need to see the whole aspect and the whole project, not just the parts. They do need to have a true, genuine passion. They need to be energetic and inspired and committed to what you're doing as a church because of the taxing requirements that are going to rest on them, whether they're a part of the building committee or the subcommittee. Number four, they must have the capacity to look long range. Number five, they must have trust and respect between themselves and the congregation and the community. And they need to have that with the building committee and the subcommittees. The next one, they must work together as a team. If you have someone that can't get along with anyone, you might not want to invite them to be a part of your building committee or even your subcommittee. They must work well together as a team. Another book for you to read in preparing for this is a secular book put together and written by Jim Collins back a number of years ago in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002. He wrote the book Good to Great. And in it, he followed the successful characteristics, common denominators to all great companies that went from good to great. Then he compared it to other companies who just stayed as good companies but never excelled or reached the plateau of being identified as a great company. In it, he talks about getting the right people on your company's bus and getting them put in the right seat on the bus. And I would add to that in the right sub-team or subcommittee on the bus. So you have a bus driver, and that's the pastor, or whoever's in charge of the building committee that is going and headed down a pathway. So you're charting a course through these webinars as to where you are and where you're headed, and you want to get the right people put on your committees and subcommittees, because how much or how many and the weight of their decisions during the preparation and planning stage, so that they give to the architect and the construction team the information they need to make the project successful. If you don't get the right people on your committee, you're well nigh pressed against an impossibility of having a successful project. And if you do have a successful project, it might not be too pleasant of a journey. So if you want your journey to be enjoyable as well as effective and efficient, then you want to follow, I think, these guidelines to help you get it done correctly. Now, let's talk for a moment about the organization of your building committee and your subcommittees. In other words, how to design them. Back up to the first thing on your screen there in front of you. And I would tell you that with your building committee, people ask me regularly, how many do I put on the building committee? These are the folks, men and women, who are going to be meeting on a regular basis, who are going to be overseeing. One of them is going to oversee this task force and another one another task force. They may have two subcommittees. When I say task force, people who are going to take care of one part or another, and you're building ownership and partnership and participation by a lot of people in your church, whether you have a small, medium, or large church, for them to come together and work together, bringing their expertise and what they're passionate about, so that you assemble a full package of information to the industry professionals. So here's a chance again, and I reiterate, to disciple and build people in their Christ-likeness and give them an opportunity to be used of the Lord in your project. All right, as we look at this, I would tell you your building committee should have 3 or 5 people or 7 or 9 people. Just a committee rule is not to end up with an even number of committee members, because if you have a split vote, there's got to be someone there. An odd number gets you past being stalled out through having a split vote. So if you're going to have 3 people or 5 people or 7 people or not 9 people, know why. And a lot of that may be dictated by the number of subcommittees you think your ministry needs to have, and the number of subcommittees that can fit underneath one building committee person. Is that making sense to you? But let me break down some parts for you of the building committee, and you can do this any way you want to, but here's just some suggestions. And again, I'll put this in a document for you on our website, where you can download it and have control of it to help you navigate your way through this. Number one, you're going to have pastors and chairperson and co-chairperson. It may be more than one co-chairperson, a vice chair. You're going to have prayer, somebody who is spearheading the importance of bathing this in prayer before the Lord. You're going to have it broken down into communication, growth and ministry, finance, and then maybe the legal. You're going to have furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. That's one of the budgeting items in it, but somebody who needs to be looking at the chairs that you're going to put in a new auditorium or in your classroom, or the chairs you're going to put in a foyer or lobby or sitting area or counseling area, or in your new office space with the furniture. You may be buying new instruments for your worship services, and so everything from sound systems to intercom systems to bell systems to you name it that would go into your facility, someone's got to watch after the FF&E. Someone needs to look at the existing property that's outside the structure, and then your existing structure that you have on the property. Then you need a secretary, someone to record everything that is going on in that building committee, that keeps documentation and then sends out notification of duties. And we'll get to a moment as you organize this, what exactly are you doing? Now, let me talk to you about the subcommittees. Now, take your ministry design and break it down into its parts and its systems. So that you say, well, we have a fellowship hall, and we regularly have the groups use the fellowship hall. You may have in the subcommittees components, the parts that they're going to have. You're going to have 8 subcommittees, and here's the areas that they're going to deal with. You could have 15 subcommittees. Again, it varies according to the church. You need to have someone who is thinking through the details of your campus, meaning parking, landscaping, exterior lighting, signage, and all the other aspects of what's going on outside. Then someone, maybe a subcommittee, can be dealing with worship and the auditorium or sanctuary and our chapel. And then music groups, someone who's over how those groups are going to function. Audio, video, lighting, audio, video, lighting, audio, visual, lighting. Interior design. I happen to be married to an interior designer. I know how important it is for you guys to think through every part of what you're going to do in the building. The more detailed you are and accurate about how you're going to do ministry, both when you're first in the building and then in the future, the better chance you've got to do the interior design so that it is a blessing and not a curse. You want to be blessing your committee, not have your members wanting to blast them because they didn't think through everything. Well, include those who are doing the work week in and week out, whether it's weekly event or weekday event or weekend event, an annual or quarterly event. Bring those people in and extract from them how they function and why. You may already know all of this, but you do want to include them in it, or it can stall you out. The next area may be recreation or fellowship or community centers that you've got. Food service. I happen to have a good friend who's been a professional chef, so he understands kitchen and serving the public very well. Well, if he were in my assembly, my church, and I were going to build a fellowship hall with a kitchen, guess who I'm going to have involved in it? I'm going to have my friend involved in it and help in extracting from him. I'm going to borrow brain, borrow experience, borrow his aptitude, his skill set, and involve him in it. Children, students, singles, college career, senior adults, empty nesters and older, and the same thing with middle-aged folks, and at different areas with the parents and the children. Adult ministries, administration, and I haven't exhausted it. Take your ministry and its design and break down every department and go find out how they do ministry. You might be amazed at what a group of ladies would do, and men, who you assign to the design of your kitchen as to where every fork and knife and spoon and plate and utensil, every bowl and plate and saucer and cup and glass, where every ingredient you need to prepare a meal and clean up afterwards and serve it to the people. Where are you going to store all that? What's going to be the easiest way for them to function as a team, as different teams come in and use that kitchen? You'll be amazed if you have people who are fully invested. They bought into the importance of that ministry and are willing to think to the minute detail about it. What a blessing that will be. And so you have subcommittees, and one way to do it is to assign every building committee is overseeing a subcommittee or subcommittees. And so you have chairman of the building committee, then chairman of the subcommittees, vice chair, sometimes co-chair, and secretaries, people who record, and finance people maybe who are involved in it, dealing with the money. And you're going through and breaking your church down, and you're pulling in more and more of your church family and inviting them to invest themselves in what God is doing, partnering with God to create a great plan, a great information packet to give to the industry professionals. And then you're going to produce from those industry professionals something very attractive to show to the church family and others exactly what their money is going to buy and how it's going to be used and who it's going to affect. And so as we go through this, whatever method you choose when you put together the design of your committees and develop them and their character and the criteria and deploy them, it is important to involve as many people as possible in this phase of the church building process. They are going to benefit when all of them have opportunity to serve. They're not all the decision makers. I'm not telling you to make the subcommittee and the committee meet together to to vote on every decision. The reason why it was created years ago to have committees and subcommittees was that the work of the whole gets done by the work of the committees. And your executive committee or your building committee or the main committee or your main building team oversees the subcommittees or the task force folks who are going and bringing information. The executive or the building committee is empowered by the church to make final decisions because they have to coordinate and orchestrate all this information, all these people, all the players, all the parts, all the programs, all the processes, all the places, all the different prices that are being brought to the table of what it's going to cost for their area. They have to orchestrate and coordinate all of that within a budget, within a dollar amount. And you've got to keep this moving forward, or you will get stalled out. I'm just telling you, it will stall you out if you don't have it organized, designed in a way that lets you be efficient and effective in going through the process. Churches often ask me, how long does it take to prepare, plan, design, build your new facilities until you're in the warranty period? And if everything goes beautifully, 18 months. 12 months for construction, 6 months for planning. But it often is 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, because they keep stalling out, where they got hung up or they couldn't get everyone together to make a decision. In this, let me give you some final rules. Number one, after you've got everyone collected on their team, and maybe you've got 30 to 40 people out of 200 adults in your church who are now a part of this, men and women. You've tested them. They've agreed to where they belong. You have their roles written out. They know exactly what they're going to do. You've got your design together with your operational manuals. You know what every committee is going to do. You've put the right people on your bus. They're in the right seat on the bus, in the right group on the bus. Now, you need to have a general meeting where you bring all those people together, or 2 meetings, one with the building committee and then one with everyone together, every player set in their area, and then break them up in groups and let them talk together in your initial meeting and have a kickoff time where you fire them up and make certain you give them their timeline, deadlines, and their tasks that they are to go after, and fire them up and send them out. And then offer support all the way through the process. But let me tell you, the leaders have got to have their act together and written down so that everyone gets the support that they need. So you want to have a general combined meeting, or at least in parts, have a kickoff meeting. You want to set target dates for all the progress reports and the individual work of the subcommittees, when they're to have it completed. You want written reports to the building committee or the executive team, the building team, whatever you're going to call them within your polity and within your culture of your church. And you want them to have as much support and resources available to them. Man, don't ask them to make bricks without straw. So give them the resources and the support you need, and then you need as leaders to be prepared to help them with conflicts that come about during the process. What if a committee can't work well together? What if there ends up being hard feelings or power struggles, and you've got to be prepared to resolve those conflicts all the way through the process, or again, it will stall you out or stop you dead in your tracks. If I had the choice between choosing someone who was gifted, and maybe some guys call it technical competence, and spiritual maturity, which one would you choose? Well, I think you ought to choose the spiritual maturity. I can borrow brains from other people and buy or rent or secure the services of of an industry professional to help me in areas that I don't have the abilities in-house. But spiritual maturity, because of the bumps and bruises and the broken arm and the broken off arm are catastrophic, you want to keep things current, Don't let the sun go down on your wrath. You want to resolve the conflict. Let's move to the next area. After you've designed the team, developed them, and deployed them, and given them what they need to support to be successful, you then want to go to another decision. Now, let me tell you up front, in dealing with the industry professionals, this can be done in two different ways. You can decide your delivery system that you want to use. That's how every contract is between the church and the industry professionals. That's what sets up the delivery systems, the contractual agreements. You want to manage what you do with the delivery system and what industry professionals you interview. Sometimes guys will go interview companies from each one of these delivery systems to decide which delivery system they want to use based on how well they feel like they connect and will be served by the industry professional. You'll understand, I think, more in a moment as we go through this. The first delivery system, which to my understanding from all my years of doing this, that is used most of the time, meaning guys have said 55% of the time, maybe more. The point is, it's the majority of the time this delivery system is used by churches. In this delivery system, design, bid, build means you hire the architect, he designs your building, he administrates the bidding of your process. He has to do so because he's there to answer questions from the general contractors who you have either open bidded it or invited a select number of general contractors to bid on your design, on your project. He's got to answer their questions because there always are questions, technical questions, that his plans are either not clear enough for the GC to fully understand, or they need some kind of clarification. And by the way, that is in no way a negative thing toward any designer of any of the disciplines. It's just the way it is on 2D paper, printed page. It's hard to see everything. It's hard to show how it shows up. So now they've gone to 3D modeling for design, and then it's much easier to see everything in the wall and how they're interrelated with each other, meaning your plumbing and electrical and your HVAC and all the other wiring that goes in the roof and the floor and the ceiling, that you can peel back the sheetrock and see what's going on there. But just know that after they bid it out, then you open the bids, the sealed bids, and you select a builder. This has been used forever. I don't know how many years, but a long time, more than what I've been alive. In this system, several things for you to note. Every one of these systems, and there are three that we're going to primarily look at. Number one, there's hybrids of every one of them. Number two, there are strengths and weaknesses in every one of them. Number three, churches have been built with successful projects under all three of them, and churches have been built with unsuccessfully, or with a lot of bumps and bruises and brokenness and so forth with each one of these systems. And so as I go through this, as a pastor, I have used design, bid, build, and I also have used the other two as working for national church builders. You have to determine which one you believe God would have you to use and which one best fits you, and we'll talk about risk and reward. And so in the design, build, bid, build process, some of the weaknesses in this is that the architect is designing and the builders, the general contractors, are not involved in the design phase at all. They don't get involved until they're bidding it, then they review the plans. And that has not worked well in some cases, enough that they went from that problem to this, went from that system to try and fix the perceived difficulties with design, bid, build, and they created the design build. Now this is where the architect and the builder are in the same company, or they're under the same contract, and they are going to produce both the design and the construction. I'm told actually that it's done with a guaranteed maximum price, so they're saying here you're going to pay $1 and we're guaranteeing that it will come in underneath that. And then if they can make it happen, the builder and the architect can make extra money. Usually this system and where its weaknesses are, and I'm doing a very brief job here because of time, is that they're under one roof, and it's usually the builder-driven process. It's a contractor-driven process where the architect works for the builder, and where you didn't have a builder involved in the design bid build process until the bidding process. Here they're there, and the tendency is now you've lost control of the design because he has control of the architect. So I would ask you, if the architect works for the GC, whose interest is he going to serve first? And under contract with the builder, he's going to serve that builder's interest first, and you're kind of losing that if your design build process has the contractor as the driver of it. Now, good honest men who are my friends have design build companies, and they build wonderful buildings, and they're very honest. But that is a perceived negative that you have to address. The third one that is used, and it's not used very much, is construction management. I say for churches. It's not used nearly as much as design bid build and as design build, as it's not used as much as those. What you have with this, where the contracts, when you use the first two, the contracts of the subcontractors, that's the guys pouring the concrete, doing the site work, those are usually individual companies, and they're all contracting their services with the general contractor. The general contractor holds the contracts under the first two. Under construction management, you hire a construction manager who is a licensed GC in most states, that maybe all of them, and you hire him to have a different relationship. He's not going to hold the contracts. The church is going to hold the individual contracts, and he holds a contract with you to work as your agent, as your construction manager with the individual subs. If you do pure agency construction management, you'll get the opportunity, because you've taken the risk of holding the contracts, you get the reward of any additional money that is saved through negotiation or change orders that can save you money, changes in what you're doing. You can reap the rewards. Normally under the first two, design bid build and design build, the general contractor is taking the risk to bring that in under a guaranteed maximum price or underneath his bid price that he has given. And if he is able to negotiate and find ways to save money, then he gets to keep it all, unless he's got some kind of agreement with you that he'll share it. But it's usually a closed book, not an open book system where you know what he paid for everything. Under construction management, you're not the GC as the church, but you're taking that role where you're going to know what the guy charged to pave the parking lot, or the landscaper to put in the trees, or the brick mason to throw up the building, or the framer to put up the metal, light gauge metal or wood or whatever you're using, or the roofer to lay down the shingles. And on you go, because the contracts are with them and you know what you're paying. Experience is, because here's the risk. The risk is, if you had $1 million project with construction management, if it ended up costing more, then you have to pay more for the building. Where in the other two, if they've guaranteed their price, then they're going to pay if it runs over. But my experience in doing this for 9 years is that it seldom runs over budget, because you learn all the ways that a GC is able to make extra money, and because he's a good steward and good at his job. Well, now you got a manager, a construction manager, who can do that in your behalf. And so these three, if you look at them, think about risk and reward. Risk and reward. And with the first one, you're taking little risk. With the second one, you're taking little risk. Some would argue with that phrasing of that, but I'm trying to be brief. And then construction management, you're taking more risk, holding the contracts and responsibility for the final cost, but then you get to reap the reward. There are hybrids of all of these. They're hybrids. Companies can make up the contractual agreement with you any way they want to, and they can share the savings that they generate through good stewardship of building your building in all three of these. Just want you to be aware of that. There is a fourth one here called Integrated Project Delivery System. Basically, this is a newer system to the industry, and it is the idea of taking all the industry partners and putting them under one contract or separate contracts or groups of contracts and bringing them together on the front end of the project, each having their own role and their own contract, and then they have to work together with the owner, in this case with the church family, to plan and design and build the new facility. The effort is to, in this fourth integrated project delivery system, the effort is to fix the weaknesses and magnify the strengths of the other three delivery systems. And so you can use all three of those within the integrated project delivery system where they're all together and they're working from the very beginning where you're getting the goodie. One example here is audio-visual lighting. Often our practice has been to design the building, build the building, and then bring those guys in and ask them to put in, they end up retrofitting their sound equipment, their video equipment, and their lighting equipment to the building instead of being included on the front end of design and have an input. Instead of doing that in all the different areas, get them up front, coordinate and orchestrate it together. You can have a project manager in-house or hire one or designate someone. For instance, the architect oversees the design phase and the builder oversees the construction phase. They each would take their part and shine in their particular part of their phase of building the building. And so in this, quickly going through this, to help you understand the different delivery systems, different companies may only specialize in one of those three delivery systems. And that's why I said you may decide that you want to do design build, and then you go interview 3 to 5 design build companies who build churches, maybe not exclusively, but build churches, and you're comfortable with them in going through and selecting them with it. And so this is my thoughts there. Now, how do you select the industry professionals? I believe that you ought to investigate them. You say, well, how do you do that? You need to find out who's out there. Are you going to stay only in your town or county, local or regional or national in order to bring in the right professionals? How far out do you feel you need to go or that you want to go to find the companies that are the best fit for you and the best fit together as a team? Because I would tell you, you ought to do the integrated project delivery system and bring them all in on the front so you're borrowing everyone's brain on the front end of your project, and it probably won't cost you any more money to do it that way because they want the work. But they're specialists contributing and investing themselves on the front end, and they'll appreciate the opportunity to have input on cost and design on the front end of your project. That's been my normal experience, my regular experience in dealing with this. But you may want to look at their websites, or you want to network with other churches and people in your church and other industry professionals to find out who might best fit your ministry. You want to inspect their work. If you may start with the whole world out there for you to choose from, but you do want to narrow the field. You do want to investigate and interview them, and you want to get references. So after you have gone like a funnel and you've brought it down to a handful of maybe 3 companies that you're going to consider, and perhaps best picking which delivery system, or maybe you're competing 3 delivery systems together and trying to choose from among 3 to 6 companies, and you're interviewing them several times, looking at their references. And may I say to you that if you ask them for a list of references, they may cherry pick and give you only the ones they want you to know about, and I understand that. I'm tempted to do that, and so is everyone else. But what about the ones where there were a lot more bumps and bruises, or something got broken? How well did they fix mistakes that happened, or things you had not planned that happened? Your fault, their fault, nobody's fault. You've got to fix them. How well do they recover from bumps and bruises and brokenness? How well do they work together with others? Are they reliable? And so I would tell you to network and find and talk to people who you know they built their building and it's not on their reference list. Lastly, and I have to quickly go through this, you want to select and negotiate the contracts. Now, I would tell you to coordinate the industry professionals together so that you've got an architect, a builder, a civil engineer, an audiovisual lighting, an interior designer, a furniture guy, and all the other components of your particular building. If you're going to follow my recommendation to strongly consider the integrated project delivery system where they're all there on the front end and you're getting the goodie out of them from the beginning, perhaps at no additional cost, that you want to make certain that they play well together, right? That you've got the right players on your bus with your building committee and subcommittees, that now you've got this big team. And again, I would tell you, consider bringing all of them together with your building committee and maybe your subcommittees and coordinating a kickoff time with all your industry professionals in your building committee and your subcommittee, because they've had a part in helping you select and vet, filter, narrow down the field of people that you're going to use in every one of these disciplines. And so you're going to select and negotiate. Now, I would encourage you to have attorney or attorneys who understand construction. And if you're going to use construction management, understand construction management, design build, and design bid build processes. The traditional way of building commercial buildings is design bid build. They ought to understand how those systems are put together and the normal contractual agreement between them, or it can cause heartache for everyone involved. Just kind of a side note. So with the industry professional, their reputation, here are things that I'll give you later so you don't have to write them down. Their reputation, their integrity, their chemistry, their craftsmanship, and their attitude and value that they bring. How do they match up there as you begin to select them? As you begin to look at the field of available professionals, how do they match up in those areas? And again, I'll put that on our website. You can pull it down and have something to kind of hold up in front of an industry professional and say, well, how is his integrity? And investigate it. As we interview him, what is the chemistry? Is he on a 1 to 5 scale, is he a real strong 5 or is he a weak, meaning 1? And we'll give you documents to let you score as you compare the different industry professionals. It's just a simple system to grade them as you interview them and as you go through the selection process. The next area dealing with the industry professionals is you've got to articulate your vision, mission, and plan. They've got to know how you intend to do your ministry on your campus, in the facility. They need to know how you might think about changing it so they can design and build in flexibility. We'll get to that in the design phase, but design in flexibility so it's easier for you to adapt and adjust your building. But you need to have a document that articulates very clear, with clarity and conciseness, who you are, what you're called to do, how you're called to do it, so that they can design it. Then you need to take that very broad document that talks about your values, mission, and vision and your strategic planning for the years to come, and you need to put it into a programming exercise. Collect the information about your children's ministry, your youth ministry, your singles ministry, your young adults ministry, your couples, young couples, and your middles, and whatever you call them, all the way up to your senior citizens and your elderlies, and then every aspect of it so that they'll know how many people you've got and what your growth expectation is so they can look at how long the building they're designing is going to last you. In other words, you want to know when you get the building designed if you have enough classrooms and how long those classrooms will last you as your church grows a certain percentage in each area through the year. You don't want to do like one church that I was working with, and they brought us in after the design was done, and we're sheetrocking their educational wing, and it's a big knocking building. Big building. The pastor looks down, the educational wing looks and goes, oh no, we're not going to have enough Sunday school classes. The time to discover that is not when we're sheetrocking the building. It's before we ever start designing. Get your act together and be serious about the programming, and the architects and designers, they should help you with this. They may have ways they want you to plug the information into and to coordinate, orchestrate that information so they know what they're to design for you. Set a total project budget. I've already given you one document that will help you do that, but you need to have a total, because you shouldn't go design more than what you can afford unless you're going to pare that building down in one way or another. I've had to do it as a senior pastor. It's not a welcome thing. It's not a pleasant thing. Get your initial estimates together. I would encourage you with all my weight, I would encourage you to have a builder who has skin in the game. Either he's one of 3 or 4 who are going to build on this project, and he knows he may have to build it within the budget he's given you, but they know how to do church. They know how to give you some kind of initial cost estimates as they look at your square footage and the scope of your project, the quality of the materials, to help you with that. It's very important to have gifted, I believe, general contractors and maybe some subcontractors to help you get a true grasp on what you're doing. Failure to budget correctly, program directly, and do initial estimates on the front end of this as you figure out how many square feet might it take per person. And I've already given you a document with the free webinar that gave you a range of square feet per person. You can plug those in, and it'll give you an idea of how big your facility may be, and then get some good numbers to help you estimate the cost. I believe that with finances, you ought to pursue lending options. You've got bonding, traditional loans, and any number of hybrids that are available out there today. Capital stewardship. How are you going to raise money, not just borrow money? And then you're going to begin your master plan development. Thank you very much for listening. We'll continue in our next session, part 3, as we look at part 3, planning and designing your new facilities. And so I hope that you'll join us next time. All right, I want to take a moment here if you folks have any questions. And Marty, can you unmute them so that they can talk to us?
Okay, I had to unmute me first.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see, I think we have a question from Nathan. Let me check in the question area. What was the name of the book? Sorry, I didn't catch that when you asked that question, so I'm not sure which book.
Nathan, what book which part? Oh, he doesn't have a microphone. Nathan, I'm going to talk to... Right, Nathan, I'm going to talk to Bill at 4 o'clock, or you can email me the question, and I'll be happy to get that information to you. And also, we're going to put the books on the website. So as I've taken my notes here, and there was one book I hadn't planned to talk about, and then 2 services I didn't have, and I didn't think I'd have time to talk about them. But I'll put that up on the website, or Marty will, and you'll have access to it. It will go with this presentation so that you can click right off of our link onto Amazon and purchase the Kindle version or paperback or hardback of the book to help you. Other questions you want to type in or talk to us?
Okay, let's see. Stephen, did you have any questions? I have you unmuted if you want to ask. Okay. Okay, so nothing.
Sunday is really bad for me. I'm just not. Yeah, Saturday's fine. I'll be around all day, so be a call and get it out and over it. See what's fine.
Okay.
Stephen, I'm having problems understanding you, and again, I think technology is letting us down. So we may have to talk by email, simply because you're garbled.
Go ahead, Mark. Okay. 8711. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's any other questions that you do have, you can send an email to Marshall. Again, we will be posting this session on the the website, and hopefully you all had that address. I sent that yesterday with the